So here's the thing. Maybe because of my mom being like alone, right, as a woman with my dad out traveling and whatever all the time from like my formative years, if you will, right, from like 6 to 16 or so. Um, Maybe that's the root of it. I don't know because we've talked about that a lot today. So that's what I'm thinking. But I have zero time for this idea that that's a man's role, right? Because you can't. Then what about all the single moms? What about the unmarried women? What about the girls in college, right? Like, and as a father of daughters, I have no time for this idea that you find a man to protect you. So even if I were going to try to use, like I see guys using as a marketing ploy against all logic, right? Like this, be a man warrior, find your masculinity. Like I just like, how can you take yourself seriously? Like, are you telling me you aren't going to let women into your classes, or women can't learn something about leadership, or women can't like take care of themselves or provide for themselves or their family? It's just, we know intellectually it's bullshit. So while I agree, yeah, hundreds of thousands of years of this role, really strict role definition, I think it's still there. Obviously I base a lot of what I do on neuroscience and natural reactions and a lot of what I teach. But when it comes to learning how to install a better lock in your door, or put up cameras at your house, or having the responsibility to put the cameras up and to have the better locks and to have the gun and the knowledge of how to use it and the quick access safe, you can't abdicate that to like some dude because you're a woman. Like, so I can't take it seriously. Just like I try to educate people about a lot of other stuff. If that perception exists, I feel compelled to make Earth better by getting rid of it in 2025, because there are a lot of women who don't like tie themselves to a dude at the age of 16 for, with 2 chickens and a goat, like, now take care of my daughter. So, dude, like, it just doesn't exist. So because of that reality, I reject the validity of that model, that role model thing in 2025.
What is going on, everyone? Tis Miyanovich, and I welcome you to the Mang Dojo, the place where we process the raw struggles of men in an unprecedented paradigm. There is something inside of you that wants you to be more than what you are. But there also may be something inside of you that wants you to go down. And for some of us, that means going down for good. So, remove your ego, drop your bullshit, become vulnerable, and step into the dojo, mate. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Mang Dojo. It is good to be back today. I'm going to introduce you to a fantastic conversation with a friend and self-defense firearms subject matter expert, Rob Pincus. Not only is Rob a subject matter expert in the world of firearms and self-defense, he is an entrepreneur. He is an author of a number of books. He is the part owner of a gun company called Avidity Arms. Rob is a straightforward and enigmatic character in the world of guns. There's never a dull moment around Pincus, and I'm looking forward to introducing you guys to the complex inner working of the brain of Rob Pincus today. Don't go in there alone. If you're going to go in there might be all kinds of electrodes and exploding boxes of TNT and big tarantulas, and probably in there a couple teddy bears in there that you could hug, and some probably 700,000 empty cases of Monster energy drink. So, without further ado, please join me, won't you, for this interesting conversation with self-defense firearms SME Rob Pincus. So, let's start with this. The last time we were here and we were talking, you were like, I was joking about your strictness on the gun range and the difference between you being strict on the gun range and you being different in real life. And you were like, yeah, well, I'm like an actual regular normal human being when I'm not teaching other people to shoot somebody in the fucking face. So there's another Rob. There's a couple Robs, or there's one Rob. There's a Rob that actually has emotions and feels emotions and processes emotions and is fair with people and kind and so on and so forth. The reason why I'm bringing this up is you have a very interesting background. You went to military school. You've been a cop. You're really into, risk, like high risk type stuff. And there's a lot of, I would say there's a tendency in those cultures to be more like, swallow your feelings, shut the fuck up, don't be a pussy, like a lot of real narrow, what I would consider like narrow masculinity. Like a man is shut the fuck up and don't have feelings and jump out of this fucking airplane and shoot that person in the face and tackle that criminal and so on and so forth. However, you have an interesting personality in that you have those things inside of you, but you're also quite nuanced as a person. And so my question is, did you start off earlier in life? Do you think you were less in touch with like emotionality, and less in touch with that world? And as you got older, you've become different. Would you say that has happened with you?
So yeah, I think in terms of expression of emotionality, I would say that I probably am less guarded maybe about that, or more in tune with that. And so both of those things are probably true as I get older. And there's still like a time and a place. I still feel that way. It's like, running a range, trying to prepare people for defending themselves or people they care about with a gun in a situation that they're really not ever expecting. Or for the military law enforcement guys, they are expecting it at a much higher level. And therefore it's, even more important, I think, to be less touchy feely about the process. Right. So yeah, I think in my personal life, with friends and whatnot, I think I've gotten more emotive, and I don't know why. Like, when you present it that way, I think back, and I guess I was probably not the like super touchy feely cry when the dog dies. Maybe like if I'm watching a movie about a dog dying, like I'll be like, oh, it's dusty in here. Like I think that's so it's always been there, but at the same time, like probably not, losing a bunch of tears over stuff sitting in social studies class.
Yeah, your dad was a cop. Your dad is an interesting cat. We'll talk about your dad. Definitely, we need to talk about your dad a little bit to the degree to which you're comfortable. But you were definitely in these cultures, man, that if you were emotional, I would imagine subconsciously at least, there's like a reinforcement regime for you to not be emotional. Do you feel like you went to military school? Your dad was a cop.
Yes, I do think that it is true that like the circles I was running around in, whether it was through sports or like my relatively young interest in guns and tactical type stuff, what I would now call tactical type stuff, none of that was encouraging one to be super emotive.
Right.
Like I wasn't in the drama club or whatever.
Right. Well, there's also like the level of that, which is really fucking bad for you. And, because we're both in the gun space, we're also in the mental health space. You know a lot about that. And men have a tendency to compartmentalize and swallow it. And that has its place. You can't run a hand grenade up to a machine gun nest if you're like going to cry. So we know that that's a part of it.
You can't be crying while you're doing it, I don't think. Right. And, and just for people listening to this that don't have any idea what my actual background is, like, it's important to note that, like, I've never shot anybody in the face or thrown a grenade into a machine gun nest. I've taught people how to do it, right, from theory and fundamental principles. Worked with some of the top level military in the world repeatedly, with the U.S. Navy side and the Army side, and some foreign law enforcement, high end military and special teams with law enforcement. was on a SWAT team, but didn't do any, face shooting. Tackled a few bad guys for sure. And some, high speed pursuits, foot and vehicle wise and all that. So yeah, adrenaline junkie, not very risk averse in general, and definitely kept company with the people that don't encourage a lot of open emotion until more recently. I think that that's shifting, right? And I think I find myself more and more with people who do have those backgrounds or have overlapping backgrounds with me, who are much more comfortable talking about our emotions. We're still probably not, bursting into tears right away, but talking about feelings and vulnerabilities. I guess that's the big thing, right? Being vulnerable is really important. It's just, I think there's a higher trust barricade before you're sort of let into the circle of vulnerability with friends and peers in that community than there might be in, we'll just kind of keep saying the drama club, where like your coffee, like your barista can hear about how you feel about your cat.
Sure.
Right. Whereas I'm only telling a few people that I actually ever have enjoyed the presence of a cat.
Right.
And everybody listening to this podcast.
Now it's done. Now the book of Pincus is going to be wide open. Do you feel like there was a part of you, I guess the question would be, were you self-aware enough when you were younger and had these sensibilities perhaps inside where you were like whether it was military school or around your dad or in the police force, whatever, you were like, if I share this shit, I'm going to get fucking clobbered. So I better fucking not. I better not show this side of myself or I'm going to get fucking clobbered. Did you ever have that feeling? Did you ever feel like it was the emotional avenue around you was very narrow and strict, and if you fucking went more broad or wider, you were going to hear it?
Not out of fear, not in a way like I'm going to get clobbered, but more in a way like then I'm not going to be perceived as I intend to be perceived.
Right.
Right. So that would be the way I would explain it. I would never say it was like fear based. Certainly not with my family. Like my family, there was definitely no like suppression of emotion by doctrine, let's say, right? But I think that the perception that I was more mature for my age, or I was, really articulated, articulate, sophisticated. Not now so much anymore, but maybe when I was 12, like wanting to be able to pull that off, like traveling around and interacting with adults and not being childish. To me, I think that overly emotional and childish were probably synonymous at that time in my life. And I would get a lot of positive feedback for being, more mature or, whatever, however you want to describe that. And that was important to me. So I think that's probably, if I had to like say, where did it come from? If it was ever a choice, the motivation to not be super emotional was probably in that area.
Yeah. And people perceived you as hyper capable or abnormally capable for a young person, and you liked vibing with and the challenge of connecting with older people that
for sure.
That's interesting. So you weren't necessarily like in a position when you were growing up where you felt like imprisoned by narrow masculinity and like, if you do this, you're a pussy and shut the fuck up.
Oh, no. My dad is definitely not that guy. Like, you got to remember, he was an undercover narcotics detective. So he was, like he was like the guy in the vest with the unbuttoned shirt in the background of, Dance Fever, right? Like the perm and driving a Fiat or a Triumph or something like. So like, he would show up every once in a while, like he was, at the casinos. I mean, he was traveling all over the place. So he was not, when you say he was a cop, yeah, he was a cop, but he was not like walking the beat, yelling at the kid for jaywalking kind of cop.
He wasn't like,
and he was very emotional guy. Like, so, and like, he'll tell like his big hunting story is the time he shot a bird with a BB gun when he was like 11 and we wounded it and he cried and he never wanted to hunt again. Like to this day, like 70. So that's like 70 years strong with my dad. That's him. So, but there was none of that like disciplinary structure. He was gone a lot. So, and then my parents officially separated when I was like 13. But he was gone a lot even before that. So I had like no structure. My mom being Midwestern, sort of close, she kind of kept her emotions close to the vest, I think more so than my dad. But it was not like weird energy from her. My brother's much more emotional than I am. Like he used to cry when the UPS guy came to the door. So ish. I don't know if that's true.
because he thought it was your
He
dad.
didn't he didn't like to answer the phone because it might be somebody he didn't like recognize. He didn't know what to do.
Sure. You know, it's
So
interesting karmically, even though you're not really, you don't really give a shit about stuff like this. I shouldn't say that. I should, you like logic probably more than karmic talk. But, the thing with the BB gun and the bird. So now maybe I understand my connection to you and to Yamani, because Yamani has a BB gun bird story exactly like that. And I do too. Like, same reaction as your dad. Like, I fucked that bird over, and it has affected me my entire life. Yamani, the same thing.
yeah, I saw that in his book. And I told him about the thing with my dad. I have a story like that too. Honestly, I was shooting at a squirrel from my bedroom window with a 22, and I was probably like 11. And a little while later, the phone stopped working, and the squirrel was on the telephone line, like the wires out in front of the house between the poles. And then the guy came and knocked on the door looking, and I was a latchkey kid, so I was the only one home. I couldn't have been 12. I'm sure I was younger than that. And he's like, "Hey, is your parents home?" Nope. Oh, well. And the guy was cool about it. He was just like, "Well, you know, I'm working on these lines out here, and we had some calls about service interrupted, and there's a lot of looks like maybe bullet holes in the wires. You wouldn't know anything about that, would you?" "No, sir." "Oh, okay. Well, if you happen to have any idea what was going on with that, that's really not awesome. We're going to get it fixed, but it would be great if that never happens again. If you happen to know anything about it or know anyone involved in that." Understood. So that has affected me to this day. I'm a lot more careful about where bullets go than the ramifications, right? I guess that's part of my strictness on the range, maybe is my I got that squirrel eventually though.
Right. It's not
Yeah.
about you killed the squirrel and his soul merged with yours and he
No,
speaks
not
to you. And
I am pretty picky about like I want Yamani to go hunting with me because I want him to eat like I want him to go through the whole process, like
yeah,
cleaning it, eating it, and I'm
yeah,
just sure anybody else he goes with is going to do too much of that for him and not
yeah,
loom over him while they say no, pull that gutty part out, dude.
yeah,
Like to get this done, skin it.
yeah.
Let's eat it. Let's get this thing cooked.
We need to do the same thing with me too, because I still
Yeah.
haven't. I mean, I don't want to exaggerate the whole I killed the baby robin thing. And then I just never was like, we still went out in the woods and still like took shots at rabbits and shit like that. But I just didn't realize how much it affected me until later in life. I was like, oh my God, that really bothered me. But it's interesting. Your dad has that kind of a story. Yamani has that story. And I also have that story.
And what's funny is I heard that story when I was a kid. And I think probably if I had to say how it affected me as I got to go kill a bird and not let that happen. Right. And then it
Yeah.
became like kill a squirrel, like eat the squirrel, like get into hunting. Like, so I think that was the effect it had on me was like, but I promise you, it was presented in the opposite of don't be a pussy. It was presented in so be really careful because there's a lot of weight with this BB gun that you got or this 22, whenever he told me the story, somewhere pre 10 years old. And I think that what I got from that was, let's see if I can avoid that trauma, and I won't have to say that to my son someday.
I mean, that's interesting. Your dad said that there's a lot of emotional weight or like personal weight. You have to approach that, right? That's quite a wise thing to say. It sounds like what a Native American would teach their child or something like that, right? Like this, you can't just kill and there's no thing. Like,
Yes, yeah, but it didn't come with so use the feathers to insulate your loincloth or whatever. Like it didn't come with that side of the lesson was never there because my grandfather wasn't a hunter either on that. So there was no lineage. Like the closest connection I have is a great grandfather. I have a 16 gauge side by side. Like I have a great grandfather who was big into hunting. He died the same month I was born or right around that time. And so my middle name, I'm named after him. And he was a big hunter. He had like the moose. My great grandmother had the big moose in the house up on the wall and all this, like the tags from all the deer. It was metal tags back in the day. When you check your deer in and everything, all the stories of him hunting rabbit and birds. I never knew him, never met him, but like, I don't have a close hunting lineage mentor until my stepfather came into my life, and he came into my life at a time like 15 years old or so. And there was nobody that was going to come into my life at that time that I wasn't going to butt heads with, in the household. So it really wasn't until my 20s that he became more of a mentor with hunting and
Yeah.
all that. But he also was more of a, tag it, take it to the processor and let them deal with it. So I don't know where my whole penchant for everything you kill has to get used and eaten and, all the hunting has to be like that came from, but it definitely is pretty strong. I made Mike DeSargo eat the iguanas we shot down in Puerto Rico last year. He was a little city. He's a city boy from California. He was a little put off.
That was like your Red Dawn, where they make them eat the heart.
Yeah,
Like, yeah. So
yeah.
you made
Make
him
them,
eat
yeah,
the
drink the
iguana.
blood. Yeah, yeah. Everybody. So, yep. But yeah, it was my dad is very wise and very open with vulnerability and conversations and all that. Like he warned me about like same thing, like being a cop. One of his stories of wisdom, was like don't ever, my dad doesn't drink hardly at all. Like if he's drank an entire beer in the last 10 years, I'd be surprised. And if he's drank a 12 pack in the last 3 decades, I'd be surprised. He's just not a drinker, never has been. But he had a story about one time when he got really sick and threw up. And he had, he was a young cop at the time. He was in uniform at that time, and he woke up, and his gun was out of the holster, like on the floor, and he woke up and he was hungover or whatever, and he had thrown up the night before. And don't do that.
Right.
Like, all right, good advice, good job. So it's like so again, what I get from that is put the gun in the lockbox when I'm going to have a bunch to drink,
Right.
and like that. Not don't drink or not don't carry a gun, but like figure out how to do that responsibly.
This is completing a good picture, and I feel like we're getting an exclusive here. Just like we got an exclusive with Yamani. If you want to like open your eyes to the mystery of Yamani, not like it's a dense mystery, but if you want to really get into that, the last post, the next two parts of his interview that I just did, he said shit I didn't think he was going to say. I didn't know. Like, boy, he really opens the book up and gets vulnerable. So if you ever really want to dig it, like what's going on with him, I know I do so many podcasts. There's no way people can keep up with all of them, but that's definitely one if you're traveling or whatever to listen to what David has to say about his upbringing. And
I have to drive. I'm actually having dinner with him tomorrow night, so maybe I'll listen to it on the way.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't think he was going to go that raw, and it was great. It was really good. So your dad also, this is interesting because this is not really exactly what I expected. I like the human brain loves to stereotype. So I think when trying to put the pieces together in the story of Pincus, I probably was like, yeah, Rob's got some stereotypical, probably meathead, narrow masculinity type shit going on in his upbringing. And his dad was a cop and he went to military school. So XYZ. So obviously I was.
No, my dad. So here's it's like my dad tried to get me not to go to military school.
Oh.
Like he's like, why don't you go to school? He went to school down in Florida. Mm-hmm. He ended up leaving and didn't get his degree at that time and went to the police academy. Basically because I was on the way and he needed like a regular job and was going to move back to New Jersey. So he went into the police academy, but he was like, kind of like, why don't you go to a big school? Like he wanted me to go to school like in Miami or something. Like, go get the college. My brother went to UNLV and my dad thought that was like, that's what college, yeah, you're going to get an education, but this is a time to do other things and enjoy and all that too. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I'm like, I'm going to military school. Watch this.
You really are kind of an anomaly, even like in your family. This is like, where is this cat coming from? Like, you don't have any precedent for these kinds of things hanging around.
No.
That's interesting. But what the other thing is interesting we'll mention is like when you were young, I can't remember how young, but your dad like let you take a loaded gun out into the woods and shit. Like, oh, just be careful, right? Didn't he?
Yeah. So I had my own BB gun, like all unfettered access and use. Like I know before I was 8, only because we moved into the house that my mom lives in now when I was 8. So, or actually when I was 7, a couple months before I turned 8. So, and I know that I had the BB gun when we moved there because we lived in Atlantic City, and there was really no place for me to use the BB gun except in the house, like across the house.
Yeah,
and it was just one of those old like pump daisy jobs.
Oh,
so
yeah, had it.
You only need like the couple cardboard boxes, and you could stop the BBs with that thing, right?
Right. You can see the arc of the BB in the scope.
Exactly. Even in like a 750 square foot like area, right? So then we moved out into like the country out into the Pine Barrens, and then it was like free for all. Then it was like, oh, okay, now I'm going to shoot the squirrels and the stuff with the BB gun, and then it very quickly became a 22, and but like even then, so I had access. So there was no controls. Like I had no boundaries, no controls whatsoever. I was unsupervised most of the time. like between my dad not being there, my mom went back to work. So after school time, from middle school on, I was really just on my own, and the guns were there, and the internet started to be there. I was on like dial up, bulletin board system stuff. So then it's like, oh, that's how you make a chlorine gas bomb. Let's try that. We didn't have a pool then, so I had to borrow chlorine from some. But anyway, it was 2-liter plastic bottle. It's fine. Yeah, so I had no supervision, and I always I actually have said this. I stopped saying it, I think, as much as I used to. But people ask how I got into guns, and I'd say, well, I had access to guns, but no adult supervision as a kid, and here I am, which was absolutely true. And I say the way I was raised around guns, even the way I raised my older daughter, who's now 29, around guns, and the way I raise my daughter, who's now 9, around guns is different. Like they're all radically different. Like I had like zero boundary. My older daughter had, I think, like conversational and theoretical boundaries, but if she'd have wanted to get to the guns, absolutely could have, I'm sure. I really believe that my 9-year-old, like there's no physical, without like serious physical damage, like she's going to have to get the truck started and run a safe over or something and I don't think that'll change, when anytime in the next few years. But by the time my older daughter was 12 or 14, she was doing defensive shooting competitions, like drawing from the holster and shooting, when she was like 10 or 11.
Yeah.
So by the time she was, 12, 13, 14, I wouldn't have worried about guns around. I think I know, like intellectually, I'm just a little bit more cautious and more aware of the tragedies and how fast they happen with teenagers and guns. So I would be, we'll see what happens. Call me in 3 or 4 or 5 years, but I'm thinking it's going to be much less likely that there's guns anywhere accessible to my younger daughter at 14 or 15. And not that she's going to be particularly different from my older daughter. I think I'm different in my risk aversion in that area.
Yeah.
But yeah, I grew up, I had loaded guns. My dad had a couple of guns. So all I had was rimfire until I moved to Georgia. I moved to Georgia 3 or 4 months before my 17th birthday, actually, to move theoretically in with him, except he was still traveling all the time. So I really was on my own. Finished high school down in Georgia, living in an apartment down there. But down there was when I bought my first centerfire guns. So that year, when I was 17, bought a 30 carbine and a 380 pistol. And like that was when I essentially started carrying a gun, at least in the vehicle, if not on me, which again, looking back, like, obviously not normal and not legal, but that's the reality of it, and I managed to navigate all those moments with all those lacks of boundaries without any major disruption. Like didn't get hooked on drugs, didn't even experiment with drugs, didn't end up in jail, didn't get shot, didn't shoot anybody, didn't burn anything down, didn't blow anything up. But I recognize that is, some portion of that's luck. But I think so the strictness that you might perceive as having been in my background, a lot of it was sort of self-imposed by the lack of boundaries that I had to have really solid, like to this day, right? I don't drink when I have a gun around. Now that hasn't always been my policy, but people know I'm pretty strict about that. If they come over to hang out at the fire, or we're doing a dinner party, or whatever, that it's not. I don't even do show and tell for non-gun. Be like, hey, come over sometime when we're not drinking. But those types of things that I'm really black and white on really have almost all been self-imposed over the years. The things that I was really, drinking and driving or whatever when I was in high school, like self-imposed, because there was nobody there to say, don't do it, except Nancy Reagan, or whatever.
Sorry, I have 10 Reagan jokes. It's interesting because I too had recognized when I was about 12 years old, I looked around me and there wasn't a lot of adults happening, and not a lot of adulting and not a lot of parenting. And I had some pretty advanced conclusions for a 12-year-old, 13-year-old, sort of like preservation. Like if I don't do some parenting here, if I don't become an adult, and now it didn't come to me in this way then, but it was like, these people don't know what they're doing. I need to do this. I can't do that. Like, if I keep doing it like this, I'm going to be in fucking trouble. There was an awareness there that came to me, that somebody was going to have to parent. So I didn't have like a hyper disciplined reaction like you did, but I had an awareness that I was going to have to be more wise or more deep about things, or otherwise it wasn't going to work out very well. So I can
See,
relate.
and that's, but see, that is absolutely not the situation I was in, because that I had the parenting was there. Like, I think my dad probably knew that he didn't know the details of some vast majority of what I was doing, but he intuited that it probably wasn't that bad because I wasn't crossing these boundaries where like the police were
Right.
involved, or like he'd come home and there were like, vagrants in the house, or whatever. And at this, the car, I did crash a couple cars. I didn't crash his car, more importantly. You know, like, but I did have the keys to the vet, and I'd go into Athens, Georgia, and like hang out with the college girls. But I'd eventually make it home, and the car would be safely parked, and nobody got pregnant or arrested. So I guess it was okay. And my mom, even before I moved to Georgia, it was. I think she probably thought she knew a lot more, like of the detail level stuff. But again, nothing was really crossing over a threshold. There was one time when I decided not to go to school, like I was going to not go to school for a week or so, or I didn't know how long it was going to last. It ended up lasting about a week. And she like went into this deep level panic because she got a call from the school, which is where I fucked it up, was I didn't answer the phone to cut off the calls of why aren't you in school? And so they called her at work and she's like, why aren't you in school? And I was like, I didn't even have like a good reason. It wasn't like I wasn't doing drugs. I wasn't like seeing the neighbor's wife. Like there was nothing. Like I had nothing good. I was just like, I don't know, just whatever. So then I kind of quote unquote got in trouble, but also there wasn't like this massive. I still at that point in my life, I think I had 3 computers in my room and no bed, and like slept on the floor, and had like an Apple II and a couple IBM whatever clones. Like I was stay up late at night doing stupid stuff, or on the weekends, either, if I wasn't doing sports, I was probably with the other friend group doing like role playing games and stuff,
Yeah.
or I was out in the woods riding a dirt bike and shooting. So I just had these three, or like really, if you thought about it, like, yes, I did a lot of sports and was very active on different teams and with that group. And then I had my role playing game friends. And I spent a lot of time just on a dirt bike or wandering through the woods alone with guns, or down in the sand pits shooting. So I really did have like a couple of different things, and they didn't overlap. So to me, like my relationship with my parents also really didn't overlap with much of that. They weren't spending a lot of time at my games. They weren't, if my friends were coming over, they probably weren't around. So I set these boundaries in place, and most of it was probably experimentally pushing boundaries. Now that I think about it, it was just like, how am things are really good. Like I have a stable life. I have, good like academic progress, good sports progress, good friends groups. So I'll fuck this up if I cross this line.
Mm.
But I think I can get away with A, B, C, and D. It's just that E or F might get me in trouble. And every once in a while I'd hit an E, but it wasn't too tragic.
Like this dynamic, I'll have to say this. If this isn't Rob Pincus in this scenario, if this is other children, more often than not, this dynamic is going to go south for the kid. And that's my opinion. You're obviously born, I've said this before, you were born with some unnatural, not normal gifts in personality, intellect, so on and so forth. And that's super apparent. It makes you not anywhere near the average. And so I see this dynamic at Latch-key Kid and all of this stuff, and I think about the morons that I fucking grew up with. And if you put those cats into this situation with that kind of dynamic, it's not going to go as well as it did for Rob Pincus. So I think that's an important note for me to make, is that you didn't get fucked up by that because you're Rob Pincus. And I think I wouldn't recommend that dynamic to other parents. Would you?
Yeah, no, I don't. I definitely don't. I keep tighter tabs than my parents did, I think. But I guess I don't know what it means. Like, oh, because I'm Rob Pincus. I think if I had to, one of the things I was always worried about was like peer pressure. I don't know. Just it was, except for that perception issue, and it really worked against peer pressure to not be super emotional or swayable or steerable, to be this independent, capable, mature person that I wanted to be. Then I couldn't be subject to peer pressure at any high level. And not being subjected to peer pressure at any high level, I think, is what helps that all not derailing. Because a lot of the stories I hear, like I was just listening to some autobiographical spoken word stuff by a musician that ended up overdosing on heroin, but like super successful guy, super talented guy. But this was just a couple nights ago, and he was talking about how he had not a lot of adult supervision but then he talked about his friend group and how he was experimenting with drugs and he was doing this and doing that. And it's so I didn't really have that friend group, first of all. So that's good. Even the friend groups and the boundaries and the pushing and the experimentation type stuff that I was around, it was very easy for me to be the person who either was the leader guy of the shenanigans, in which case they were going to be shenanigans within my boundaries, or it was very easy for me to sidestep and just be like, yeah, I'm not into that, not my thing.
Yeah.
Or in some cases, try to counsel somebody away from doing something, especially with the drugs at that time. So, yeah, I think that's probably, if I had to put it on one facet of my life that allowed me to navigate that space with luck, whatever luck portion there was, it was a lack of peer pressure ability. That's the word.
That's interesting.
Which is weird now, because now I get really upset when the internet criticizes me.
Well, it's good to know that the being the leader of the shenanigans within boundaries thing has never stopped, because that's the leader of the shenanigans thing is still active and alive inside of you after 5 decades of being on the planet. The other thing I find interesting is, just like myself, I was a jock, but I was also a brain too. And so I was friends with the jocks and friends with the nerds. And I got a real good opportunity when I was 12 years old. Shit went south in my family. And one of my knees was fucked up a little bit. And I got depressed. I couldn't play sports for a little over a year. Bad shit in my family. I got depressed. I was like comfort eating. And like right when the worst time for you to gain weight right there is, I gained like 35 pounds in like, I don't even know, 14 months or something. And really depressed, really hurt. And all the girls that were originally like, oh my God, Randy's so cute, were like, ooh, fat. And even my dude friends were like, you're fat now. And so I was forced to hang out with my nerd friends, and they didn't do any of that shit.
Yeah, nerd friends at that middle school, high school level are way less picky.
Right.
I think, right? Picky on. I actually just found out one of my nerd friends, who was also a hockey friend. We had a weird group, I guess, because we did have a lot of overlap in the role-playing game group and the sports group in my hometown. And one of those dudes just passed away. We used to spend many a long Saturday, Sunday, either laser tagging in his yard or more often than not, rolling dice in his dining room. And he just passed away last week.
Was it
good dude, Anthony?
Unfortunate,
but he was also on the hockey team.
Yeah,
brain cancer.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, from what yeah.
Well, I got a chance to taste that. Like, oh my God, my nerd friends are like solid up. And then my knee got better. I lost the weight. I grew 8,000 feet and went back and was able to go back in the jock clique more. And I wasn't as impressed by it being the cool dude, and who was the cool dude, who was the hot. I was just more like, fuck this bullshit. Like, yeah, I'm in on it, but it doesn't really drive me. And the point that I'm bringing is like, especially when we're talking about like maleness and masculinity and these sorts of concepts, you have a pretty unique perspective because you're nerdy. A lot of people don't know you're nerdy. You hide it pretty well, just like you hide your deep Jewish magic, which maybe we'll talk about later. You hide that deep Jewish magic pretty well, and we'll see if I leave that in there.
Yeah, no, I don't know. If you do, we have to circle back.
We're gonna have to. Well, it's like Jewish shamanism. You're not into like mysticism and like magical shit, but you have weird psychic abilities and you make fucking shit happen. Anyway, we'll talk about that. Maybe, perhaps, maybe we have to save it for the next time. But I
didn't know you had Judar like that.
I do. I'm pretty good at it. I think when you sleep with a few in high school, because a couple girlfriends, you get like some kind of calibration. They have hot moms. Anyway, it's a whole. I'm gonna blame low testosterone. So you have a good, an interesting place that you're in, because you don't have this concept like, if you're a nerd, you're not a fucking man. If you like D&D, you're not a fucking man. Like that kind of real narrow thing that you could find in like meathead males. You'll like do sports and shoot the guns and teach people how to shoot the person in the face and throw a grenade, and also do the Dungeons and Dragons. And you're not a person whose brain is like, you're not a fucking real man.
No, it's definitely not. No, it's now, like I said, some of that was very compartmentalized. Like as I got older. But then even like last year, I was there's a local little gaming spot kind of near the factory, right, for Avidity Arms, and I was in there playing one of the games, the Games Workshop kind of battle tactics games, and you get the little figurines, you're rolling the dice and doing all that. I'm over on one side of the place, and there were a couple guys from the factory floor, like machinist type guys that run the machines and make sure things work right on the factory floor, over on the other side, like playing one of the card games, Magic or something like that. And the one dude saw me go over to get an energy drink out of the fridge, and he came over and he's like, "I thought that was you, dude. You just became like 10 times cooler. Just good to see you over here." And I was like, interesting. Like, if you look at the full factory floor, Western North Carolina, bunch of blue collar dudes. Like, not only was I not expecting to see any of them playing, Magic or Pokemon or whatever it was, but I also wouldn't have. I think the archetype is, oh my God, I hope Rob doesn't see me here. Wait a minute, Rob's doing something dumb too, and not, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, but the guy was like made a point, like, oh, that's cool, and so. As the guy who travels the world, like doing the stuff I do and designing the gun, and I'm the guy who designed the gun, and I'm shooting the guns and I'm teaching the guns and working with all these people over the world, doing the things I do. The last thing that you would think, oh, it's going to make me cooler to the guy who works with the CNC machine or whatever, that I'm also like a gaming nerd. You don't really think that, but I think that is actually the reality. Like as I navigate like Earth, jumping in and out of different pockets of very cloistered or compartmentalized people who don't ever get out of their echo chamber or get out of their compartment. They're kind of like, this is the thing they do, and they live up to the archetype. I find more and more that you can't predict necessarily what somebody is going to think is cool because you're only going by the superficial. Unfortunately, I think a lot of people get stuck in the superficial and they don't ever go to the Pokemon convention to see if it's actually interesting, or go hunting to see if they dig it, or go to the gun range, to see if it's actually fun.
Yeah, I don't think most people have a clue. I didn't. I knew. I was friends with you for 2 years before, and Hunter and I were already going up to the deck box doing Pokemon before I even knew. Or you were just like, yeah, I went over to the place and the thing, and I'm playing Warhammer. And I was like, what? You playing Warhammer at the deck box? What the fuck? How am I just learning this now?
What?
Yeah. I was like, okay. This is cool. I mean, I knew you had computer nerdery going on and shit like that, but I didn't know that you were into like the gaming. So I think a lot of people, well, again, people like to stay superficial in the gun world, see you on the magazine and the video and the thing, and they think they know Rob Pincus, but they don't really know Rob Pincus, because Rob is out there with the, in the alpha stream, with like, shoot the people in the face. And then also you're not kind of a nerd, you're nerdy. You're engineering and nerdy and creative and all that other stuff. It's just not emotive all the time. Yes. Right. Which, okay, that's fine. Not everybody is super emotive, but you're the mini me, and he calls you the mini me, but you're the mini me of Derek. Derek always says, that's my mini me. You both have something that betrays a little bit sometimes if people don't pay attention. And that is, I don't want to say it's a front, like it's a bad thing, but you have an aspect of your personality because you're on the gun range and we're dealing with lethal fucking explodies and stuff like that you're no horse shit, and let's get on it. And this shit can be dangerous. So let's fucking go. Stop fucking being a pussy. Let's do the drill. You guys have that.
But I have to signal every once in a while. Like every once in a while, like somebody gets like a really nails the headshot right in the middle of the triangle. And I'd be like, oh, you just rolled a 20, and then you just look for the reactions to see who your people are. You guys got to throw that out there once in a while, right?
A quick code switch.
Or like, somebody's like, just staring at the gun, tapping and racking when they're supposed to be stripping and clearing, and it's just like, you're gonna need a saving throw, bro. And see who gets it. You gotta see who gets the joke.
Yes, you guys both have that like harder front you can put on, but you both are like, when you get to know you and Derek, you guys also have a major teddy bear variable. For sure you do. Like
more him, because he's like bigger, like a teddy bear.
Yes, but there's like,
I'm like a stuffed monkey.
There's like a kind, like, oh, you just want to hug this person. Like some people give that energy off. Like, here's who doesn't give that off, who's also a nice guy, but he doesn't give it off. Jeff Abraham. He doesn't give that vibe off. He's a very nice guy, very sweet. But you and Derek emit like this guy's kind of a teddy bear. I think I want to give him a hug. You guys both have that. You both have it. And so it would be easy for people to
both been married multiple times. I mean, you don't keep getting married unless somebody wants to hug you.
Right.
That's what I found.
Yeah. Well, that it's there. And so you guys are like, I love Derek's thing because it's always like his shirts are always like, fuck you and your feelings. I'm the Constitution and the fucking your feelings for the Constitution for your fucking feelings. And he says shit like that all the time. But then when you're around him, he's like full, his like aura like exudes like a teddy bear emotion, right?
He hates it. Yeah, he does. He hates it. That is true.
He's a kind guy and a good guy.
On his motorcycle, like, this leather vest.
Yeah. Obviously his parents, at least one of his parents was a teacher, and they obviously were very caring and good people. And huge. Yeah. And it obviously rubbed off on Derek. And he's a Marine, and he does that fuck you and your feelings, but he's also cuddly. So you have a little bit of that going on too, which is like the whole point there.